Hello, beautiful people. In today's episode, I get the pleasure of speaking to Ryan Mulholland. Ryan is a writer and someone who just started writing on the internet this year, but he's created his own writing group, and his essays have grabbed me in such a way that I said to myself, I need to have this guy on the podcast. He's someone like me who thought that they weren't creative, and now he's on a mission to help non-creative people, quote unquote non-creative people, turn into creative beings that we all are. And so had a really, really fun time with this conversation and think you will really enjoy it as well. If you're new here, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. You will receive a new episode of the Danny Miranda podcast every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from a high performer to your ears on your favorite listening platform. If you'd enjoy that, just hit that subscribe button. And without further ado, let's get right into the episode. This is Ryan Mulholland.
Interesting people, thought-provoking conversations, nutrition for your brain. Journey through the minds of the world's top performers and discover what it really takes to achieve your highest version. This is the Danny Miranda Podcast.
Let's just get right to it and tell everyone a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I guess just to touch briefly on professional purposes, I work in the meetings and events and incentives industry as an account manager. But that's just to get that out of the way, because mostly for the purposes of our conversation, I do a pretty fair amount of writing online. It's kind of one of my favorite things in the entire world is formulating my thoughts through writing and putting it out there online. Then I also am a co-founder of an online writing community that launched this year called WritersBloc. So that's been kind of a big creative and project for me going on here this year. And then just to kind of fill you in on what my main interests are, definitely creativity. I have a lot of personal theories and feelings about that word and how big that word is, but what it can mean for us personally as people who are A, writers, but B, just, people living and spending time in the online ecosystem. And I'm also very interested in education, both public school education, kind of starting from youth all the way through higher education. Most of my family works in education. And so it's kind of one of the main topics that I've always thought a lot about. There are a lot of problems that need to be fixed. And I love thinking about those problems and how they can be addressed. So that's a little bit about me. I live in the Los Angeles area. I've lived out here for 2 years, and it's not the worst place to be in the year 2020 when you have to be outside a lot and can't go to many indoor places.
Well, living out in Southern California certainly is nice. And we definitely are going to touch on a lot of those topics like education and creativity. But what I want to start with is you started this community of writers called WritersBloc. Why did you do that?
Yeah, so that started with myself, and there's two other guys that are the co-founders of that community. And so the reason that we started it, and it actually started really just among the three of us, but writing, and I'm sure you've experienced this at some point in your writing, Danny, but it can be a little bit of a lonely endeavor. There's none of my, online you call them in real life friends, but none of my in real life friends write or have an interest in that. And so I kind of found out very early on that as I was writing, I really enjoyed it, but there weren't a lot of people that I knew who were also doing similar things. So I connected with the two guys who are co-founders, and we kind of helped each other out a little bit, talking through some ideas with our writing, but then also doing a little bit of reviewing essays that we're working on, just kind of spitballing ideas. And very quickly we realized, well, there are a lot of people, we kind of reside in the Twitter community. There are a lot of people on Twitter who are very interested in this, and there were people who just wanted to be a part of a community of writers. And so we just decided, you know what, let's do it. Let's throw something together. We'll create a community and see how many people we can get interested in this. And we really had no big intention of this being something massive or even a money-making thing. But as it just kept growing, we turned it into a paid community, launched that as a paid community in August. And it's been really fun. We've got, about 104, 105 people in there at this point in time. So it's still relatively small, but just started as a way for writers to connect with each other and give encouragement and accountability and support each other in their writing. And
it's awesome, man. And it really is so true. When you're writing, it really seems like a solo endeavor. And especially when you're beginning to build that momentum, a community is super powerful. I also spoke to Stu Fortier on episode 9, and just he's building another writing group online. And it's just, the point is that it's such a beautiful thing when you can use that and use other people to build yourself up in whatever activity you're trying to get better in.
Yeah, wholeheartedly agree. It's a powerful learning mechanism as well. I mean, just having conversations and hearing perspectives from other people who are engaging in something similar is not only a motivating thing, but it's an educating thing. It's like going to a class where there's no teacher and everybody's just helping each other in the best way possible. So that's kind of the power of that community. And I think, to your point, I've heard of Stu's community and Compound Writing, like they're doing something great. There's all kinds of communities that are popping up, especially this year. And it's a really neat wave in education and learning and just becoming better at whatever it is you like to do.
Definitely. So it makes me wonder, and it makes me want to ask you, why did you start writing on the internet to begin with?
Yeah. So I think, a lot of people will, especially if 2020 is the year that you point to, that you started writing on the internet, at least like committing to that. A lot of people will probably point to someone like David Perel, and that's who I would point to as kind of the first person that I found who was very vocal about the benefits of writing online. But I've always loved writing, and I had 2 majors in my undergrad work, but one of them was political science, and there's a lot of writing involved there. And I found out through school that writing was something that I enjoyed. I felt that it was something that I was good at. But as I kind of got started in my professional career, I didn't do a lot of it for work, other than just writing emails, which everybody does, but not a lot of like actual writing with purpose. And late last year, I kind of started feeling like I wanted to write more, had done a little bit of writing just like on my own. And then through engaging with people on Twitter, kind of realized, okay, there are a lot of benefits here of writing online. And so I decided to take that online because I kind of thought about it and still feel this way. But like writing online, there's really no downside to it at all. And the upside is massive, sharing your ideas, formulating your thoughts into something that is creative and entertaining, but informative. It just has so much unlimited upside, and there's no downside other than, maybe your friends and family will be like, what's that guy doing? What's he writing about? That looks funny, but I don't care about that. And so I thought, well, you know what? I'll just commit to this for at least a year. And if I hate it after a year, I'll stop and try and do something else. But so far I've loved it. And I think it's at this point something that I'll always be doing, just because it really is that creative medium for me that I enjoy doing. I'm learning a lot. I'm formulating my ideas and I'm putting them out there online for people to potentially run into at some point. So that upside is huge. And now the community that we've found in it has been pretty cool as well, to meet all these people who are doing something similar. So yeah, the upside, unlimited, no downside. It was just like a no brainer. And once I got going and now that there's a little bit of momentum in what I'm doing, it's super fun and it's exciting to think about the possibilities that it could hold.
Dude, I love that you said that you made that commitment to yourself of 1 year, because that is the same commitment that I made to myself in late March when I started posting on my website. I said, listen, I'm going to post 2 times a week for 1 year. And if I don't like it at the end of 1 year, I'll stop. And, I started doing it, loving it. And then in May, I said, okay, I'm going to do this newsletter. I'm going to do 100 newsletters. And if I don't like it after 100, I could stop. And so to have these promises to yourself, especially in the beginning, is really important because it sets your expectations at the right place, right? You're like committing to the process of writing, not the process of how many eyeballs or how many connections or who's going to see my work. It's a totally internal battle when you're saying, I'm going to do this for 1 year. And then it gives yourself an out. And that's such a great way of going about it. And it doesn't surprise me at all why I've enjoyed your writing, because when you go at things with that mindset, you're only trying to please yourself.
Yeah, that's so true. And that's so funny that you made that same commitment, because I feel that type of commitment, yeah, it's a process oriented commitment. It's not like you just said, it's not a goal oriented commitment in terms of readership or number of page views. It's a personal commitment. And those are kind of like, at least for me, those are like the most strong commitments that I can make, is if I say that I'm going to do something, I always want to be the person who does that. And so, the year, it was just like, hey, I'm starting my personal website that I've never had before. All right, I'm just going to, up that subscription for a year. So that makes sense. Let's do this for a year. And yeah, if a year is a pretty good chunk of time, and if it's something that you don't enjoy after a year, well, it probably doesn't make sense to keep doing that. You've given it a pretty fair shake, but like, yeah, and it also gives you that time to kind of get through that. What I guess James Clear is, a lot of people referencing James, is the valley of disappointment where you're working at it steadily, but you're not seeing the results yet. It gives you time to kind of get somewhere where you feel like you've seen potential results, and now you know what this means for you personally moving forward. And then, yeah, you can reanalyze that commitment. But yeah, I love being able to make that commitment to myself and then follow up on it in a way that works for me. So,
have you made that commitment in any other area of your life other than writing online?
Yeah, that's a great question. So to be honest, not recently. When I was in high school, but really all my young days, all the way through college, I was an athlete, and so I made a lot of commitments in terms of working on my athletic craft. I played basketball, and so lots of commitments involved with that. Lots of time spent being better physically and with my skill for that. But I kind of alluded to this earlier when I talked about why I write online, but I found a career that I really enjoyed, and that's been great, but it's also kind of lulled me into this like sense that, at least for the last probably 5 years of my life, this sense that like I'm doing something I enjoy, life is good, I don't have these things that I need to work on. And I think that was pretty harmful overall to my like mental state, because I didn't have this creative craft that I was working on consistently, that I was making commitments to myself, trying to find new ways to get better. It was just this false sense of security that like everything was kind of like in a good spot, and that I didn't need to kind of actively work to make that better. And so that's what I've enjoyed about writing so much. And I kind of have this also like theory that, and I'm sure there's some official theory for it, but there's almost like this waterfall of learning that cascades from one discipline into the next, so like you start working out really intensely, and then that makes maybe you want to grow in another area. So like then you start writing, and then you want to grow in another area. So you start working on this other skill, and it's just like working hard at one thing makes you want to work harder at other things. And I think for so long, I had this like stagnating period where I didn't work on things, and writing and fitness were two of those things that have kind of kicked me back into gear. And now I feel like I'm making more of those types of commitments, but writing has been the one that I'm working on now. And I'm sure, I feel like I'm kind of coming up on some of these other projects that I've been working on where I may be ready to make commitments there as well. So,
dude, I love what you said about the cascading waterfall, because that has been totally true from my perspective in my life. It's like I started working out and lifting weights like 3 years ago. Then it started leading to, I'd mastered that. Then it started being like, okay, how can I improve? How can I add to that? And so I started meditating. I started writing online. You build. You have one thing and you do it well, and you're like, holy shit, something that was difficult is now something that I can actually do and do pretty well. And if I could do it in this area, then I could do it in any area. So, dude, I relate to that so hard, and it's such a great point.
Yeah, I love that, and that's exactly how I feel. Like that articulates it perfectly. And to be fair, I think I don't know this. It's maybe not a realm that everyone's into, but I definitely am convinced that physical fitness is kind of like that baseline type thing. Even if you might be someone who's not into working out or fitness, but you might do a lot of writing, for example, or other. You might build websites or projects, might be a talented coder, and those could be like launch points. But I think physical fitness is just like gets you in such the state that you're just ready to keep growing out of that area and into other areas as well. So I think it's a huge launch point, like you just said.
Yeah, absolutely. And it really serves as the foundation for everything that you do. It's like if you have high energy, and this is what I think physical fitness does. It gives you high energy by working hard to achieve a result or to push yourself. And you even don't even have to push yourself. Even going on a 10-minute walk or a 30-minute walk is something that is everyone is capable of doing. And if you're doing that on a consistent basis, you always feel better. Ryan, I had a full 45-minute walk right before this call, and I feel completely different after the walk than I did before. And it's like something about being in nature, moving, is super helpful to creativity and super helpful to just making sure you're in your peak mental state.
Yeah, 100% it is. It's just that act of doing something good for yourself physically, for mentally, and getting up off the couch and like going out and being active obviously gives you more energy, but that energy is like it has such like a contagious aspect of itself that it broadens out into the rest of your life, into your work, and into your creative endeavors. So yeah, I love it.
Yeah. So switching gears a little bit, talk to me about your actual writing process. What does that look like? Do you have a way of going about writing, or is it kind of just free flowing? Like, talk to me about your actual process and how you work.
Sure. Yeah, that's great. And I love hearing other people's processes. So hopefully by sharing mine, somebody else gets a little something from it. But I don't have a super complicated process. My goal with writing is to keep it simple. And I've had some essays that I've written that I haven't necessarily enjoyed writing so much. And because of that, I want to make sure in the future the things that I'm writing are things that I'm like really enjoying or passionate about. And so what I do is really anytime I'm reading something or learning something, or just there's an idea in my mind that I'm thinking about, I throw it into a spreadsheet that I keep of just essay ideas. And I've got a pretty solid bank in there at this point. I probably need to pause on the ideas and execute a few of these, or I need to remove some of them that I haven't executed on for a while. But so I put an idea in there. And then, everybody kind of at this point, most people have a note-taking system, but I have a note-taking system where I just keep ideas kind of coming and adding to in there. So that way, by the time I'm ready to actually write about something, I have at least a bank of ideas that I've already kind of kicked around in one way or another. And so, yeah, anytime I finish an essay and go to write something new, I'll just pop into that to that spreadsheet, pick what excites me the most, and I'll just throw out all of my ideas into a quick draft and get everything out of my head onto paper. And then eventually I'll go back through again and organize that into the way that makes the most logical sense. Try and add something entertaining. I think illustrations are also a huge part of writing. Super underrated, honestly. I think anything that's been my best performing essays have had a visual component to it, or maybe some sort of overall metaphor. Those types of things are very interesting. Then with WritersBloc, that's like one of our built-in things for WritersBloc is there's people there who are happy to review your work. And so I always put my essay into review with our writing community in WritersBloc and get some reviews there. I put it in there once I've done all of my own editing and trying to get it into as final of a format as I can. But there are times when, and I'm sure you've experienced this too, Danny, where I get to a place in an essay and I'm like, oh man, I hit a dead end here. Like this is a roadblock. Like, where do I go? And even just having a few people look at that and they give me kind of their perspective on it, or I have a conversation with somebody, those are hugely important parts of my writing process too, because those can kind of kickstart my brain back into gear and I can bust through whatever wall I had hit and kind of move forward from almost a new angle that I hadn't maybe thought about, that but is very important to the topic that I'm writing about. So there's kind of those stages in my process. The ideation just kind of comes naturally in terms of what I'm going to write about. Dump it all into a draft, do my fair shake of editing, which really cleans it up logically. Then I try and have conversations and have somebody else look at it before I repurpose that final version and make it into something that is ready to publish. So that's kind of my process. It's, again, super simple. I want to try and keep it simple because I do, at this point, as someone who is newer online, just within this last year in terms of publishing online, I want to get enough stuff out there at this point. So my goal is usually to publish something about twice a month. My work tends to be around like 1,000 to 1,500 words is kind of what it ends up usually being. And that's really the whole process. It's meant to be simple so I can kind of try and stay at that rate of publishing.
I love it, man. And I find that it's really interesting, right? Because you put one person's name on an essay or an article, and you put one person's name on the cover of a book as like, this is the author. But what I've found so often is that the real author is so many different people. Like, it could be my mom or grandma or brother or someone I spoke to about an article, or it could be someone random online, or it could be a group of people. And it's like, I'm getting credit for this writing, but really this writing is a lot of different people. And it's very interesting that you found something similar.
Oh yeah, it's so true, and that's why on a lot of essays you'll see, credit to this person and this person as well. And I haven't done that. I probably should, but it's just literally that act of having a conversation about what you're writing. The other day I called a friend. I just published an essay this week, and last week, kind of later in the week, I called a friend and we talked about the idea a little bit. And I was like, hey man, like I kind of feel like I've come to a surprising conclusion here that I wasn't expecting. And it feels like it's not worth writing about. It feels too obvious, let's talk about this for a second. And then we talked about it a little, and I kind of got a couple new thoughts and ideas. Like, that's the process that's so helpful, because just talking about it out loud or hearing what someone else says about it, it just makes you think about it logically in a different way. And that's, again, part of our theory behind writer's block. If you're just doing it alone, there's not, you're missing out on a whole side of value that you could have from having other people who write engage with your work and help you with your ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. And what you were saying before about having so many ideas in your drafts folder in your spreadsheet, I relate to so hard. And what has helped me with this is to just make those into tweets, right? If you have like 100 different ideas or 50 different ideas, you just write like one sentence about each one, or a little paragraph, a little blurb, and you realize like, oh, this could be an essay, but this could also be a tweet. And so, I don't know, just food for thought for anyone listening or you.
Yeah, that's a great thought. And a lot of people do that. I haven't done that. And maybe that's a great idea for what I should do. And also it gives you like that first level of feedback too, right? If it's a tweet that performs well, then hey, maybe that's something that you can expand on that your audience wants to hear about.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about some of your essays. You had a great piece on quitting that we'll link to in the show notes. But talk to me a little bit about your thoughts on quitting in general.
Yeah, so that essay started with me thinking kind of about two main ideas that a lot of people are familiar with that you may read about either in books that you read or just on Twitter. But like, one, I was thinking at the time a lot about opportunity cost. The idea of, okay, I'm working on something right now, but is it worth giving that up to go work on this other thing that may be a better opportunity for me? So I was thinking a lot about that, and I was thinking about the concept of yak shaving, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. That one's a little bit more obscure, but it's something that Seth Godin talks about every now and then. And that's the idea of, you're working on this task that's pointing to a North Star. And in the meantime, your way there, you get distracted with all these side tasks that are out of the way. And you end up, he calls it yak shaving, because you end up shaving a yak instead of doing, writing a paper, which is super unrelated. So that's kind of the point. And I was thinking about those two things, and really they're both reasons for what you could call quitting, I guess. You quit something because you got distracted along the way. You could quit something because there's a better opportunity for you somewhere. And so I started writing and thinking about one particular instance in my high school days, I think, where I had quit something, and I very specifically remembered it. And I was just like, well, this would be interesting to unpack in writing for me personally. And it ended up being an essay that I was like, this is a good one to publish. So my conclusion with that, and you had asked what my thoughts on quitting were, is that, there are definitely real instances of quitting. And that story that I just mentioned, I remember quitting. I had tried out for this pretty elite soccer team. I played a lot of soccer as well when I was in high school. I had tried out for this team, had a pretty good first tryout, and I didn't go back to the second tryout. And I had told myself at the time I had this new girlfriend and I wanted to hang out with her. And it just like, I was like the playoff football game, could spend time with new girlfriend, or B, go drive an hour away and try out for this team. And I quit. I did not go to the second tryout. And it was such a weird story from my youth that had stuck with me for some reason. And through that process of writing and thinking about it in these terms, I realized that it was quitting, because I think I was afraid of failing. I was afraid of not making that team. And I considered myself someone who was good at soccer. And I didn't want to be proved otherwise by not making this good team that I thought I had a fair chance of making, but I wasn't quite sure. So that kind of helped me refine my thoughts about quitting. And then I just at the end realized, what, I think quitting is kind of the surface term. There are innumerable things you could look at and say, that's quitting, or he quit that, she quit that. But what's behind that term? Is it quitting because you think there's a better opportunity? Did you write for a year and you realize you didn't enjoy it, and so now you're quitting that to try something else? I think those are good reasons to quit. There are so many good reasons to quit something. There are obviously some bad ones too, but I think the point that I was trying to make with that essay is that really think about and get below that surface term quitting to think about what the reasons are, because it's not always a bad thing.
I love that whole thing. And what's crazy is that, and the thing that sticks out to me is that writing is a form of meditation. And the reason why I say that is because I've been meditating now for the past 4 months, and what I've come to realize is a lot of surface level, a lot of things that I've been pushing off the surface level, the things from high school, the situations from college, all come flooding back. And what you talking just now made me realize was that, oh my God, writing is also another form of meditation. It's going deeper than the surface level. It's really examining yourself. You have to string out the things that are inside you and bring them to the paper. And that's a difficult process. And yeah, man, it's really cool to hear you speak about that, and so open and so self-aware and honest about where you were and what your decision was. And so I really appreciate it, brother.
Yeah. And you're so right too, that writing it's definitely meditating. And I have tried to do traditional meditating, and I don't just know if I don't have the focus or what, or I probably just haven't committed to it, but that's never worked for me. But writing is the way that I do that for sure. And I did not start that essay and thinking about that story by having already had the conclusion that I quit because I was afraid of failure. But it was through the drafting process where I realized oh man, I was just afraid of failure. It was so obvious to me in that moment where I had finally like put my thoughts together about it. And without writing, you most of the time don't just sit there and put your thoughts together about any story from your past or present. And so that's another thing that I love about writing. Whether you're publishing it online or if you're just doing, some journaling, that it helps you put your thoughts together and you realize things about yourself that may have always been true, or that, it helps you analyze stories in different ways.
Yeah, man. And I think it connects you to who you really are. It connects you, writing that is, and meditating, and it all connects you to just like your inner child almost. And I think of, what you say, it makes me think of Julia Cameron's, her practice of doing morning pages, and that's writing 750 words every day in the morning. And the reason for doing that is because it connects you to just like what you really feel and puts that on paper. And once you get that on paper, it allows you to be free and it allows you to just like have a weight off your shoulders. And it sounds like from what you just said that like having that story and understanding why you quit and really analyzing it just like put a weight off your shoulders.
Yeah, it really did. Yeah, it's I'm familiar with morning pages. I don't do them myself, but a lot of people in WritersBloc do that. And it's equated to basically like clearing out your junk drawer for the day. You write in the morning, you clear out the junk in your mind, and now you have clarity, a level of clarity moving into the day. And this was really the first essay that I wrote where it did that for me. I personally experienced it, and I was kind of like, man, I got to keep going with this. Like, I got to do this more often.
Yeah, man. And so touching on that a little bit is like creativity. And creativity is something that comes from doing those morning pages. And it's something that you've spent a lot of time thinking about with your idea of minimum viable creativity. So talk to me a little bit about that essay as well, which we'll link in the show notes.
Yeah, I would love to. So to start on that topic, I kind of have this, is almost my overarching personal thesis as like the entire why behind why I'm writing and why I think about education and creativity. And it's that I never saw myself as a creator ever, as someone who is creative in any way. And I think that comes from, I don't know, yeah, so I went to public school, and I'm sure it's the same public, private, whatever, but it comes from your school experience in many ways. And I think most people we look to things like art or music as the creative disciplines, and the kids who engage in those things are the creatives, and those are the creative people. And you almost label yourself as someone who's not creative by not engaging with those type of creative disciplines. And so I think I mentioned I was an athlete, so I kind of like identified it in that way. And because of that, I was just like, well, I'm not creative. Mm-hmm. And that to me is one of the most harmful things that I've ever kind of like thought about myself, because, now here, fast forward many years down the road, creativity is in everything. And you have to be really creative to excel in almost any pursuit, professionally or personally. And so that's kind of my thesis on creativity, is that like, unless you have kind of like found something that and to be fair, like anyone can find something that is a creative pursuit. It can literally be anything. For me, it's writing, but it can be learning how to surf, or it could be in any field. And so having something that you kind of engage with creatively to help you understand that you have creativity inside of you. Basically that's kind of my thesis. Like I call it passive creative, as someone who just doesn't engage with their creativity. They're passive about it. They're hands off. They let the world happen to them without really knowing that they need to be creative. So that was kind of like me. And I write almost like a former version of myself, the one who had a bad relationship with creativity. And I still don't think I'm a creative person, but here I am. I write. I think that's creative, and I try and get it as creative as possible with that. And now I'm working on creating a few other things like in the background as well. And so, that's kind of my personal thesis. And so I wrote this essay, Minimum Viable Creativity, based off of the idea of minimum viable product, which a lot of people will know from, startups. Basically, what's the lowest form of creativity that I can produce that is publishable and is going to get me in a creative habit where I can keep building upon my creativity. And so I made kind of a little chart. Basically, for minimum viable creativity, you want something that's thoughtful, that's rational, that's consumable, it's attractive, and above all, it needs to be like valuable in some way. It doesn't have to be 100% great at every single one of those categories, but it needs to have a little bit of each, I think. And if you can put something out that has a little bit of all of those things, then you can feel like, okay, this is ready to be published. I can get it out there. I can start building a bank of creative material. You can get your creative confidence kind of flowing. And then you can keep kind of doing that step by step. And eventually along the way, it just builds and better each time. And so that's kind of my idea of minimum viable creativity. You want to be able to get things out at volume and just get that base version out, and then allow yourself with reps to be a better creator over time.
I love that so much. And it makes me think of David Perell's idea of B+ content, A+ consistency, right? And it's just like,
exactly.
And it's just like, if you put it out there enough, if it's good enough, if it's a B+, it's good enough to get the job done. And it's really cool that you provided the framework for that. It's really interesting how also I did not think of myself as creative at all when I was growing up, and it's for the exact same reason. I just did not think I was good at art or science or music, and so you start to box yourself in, right? But you don't realize, I didn't realize at least, that everything is creative. If you're creating a conversation, that's creative. If you're doing pretty much anything that requires you to do something that you have never done before or do it in your own way, that's creative. So I think your essay is something that everybody should check out, and it's really important not to box yourself into one situation or one label or another.
Yeah, that's totally accurate. Yeah, and I think that would be a common point of view. I think that there's a total misnomer on that word creative, and people just kind of assume that it's one thing when it's really not. It's really even more broad than it's already kind of a broad thing, but it's even more broad than that. And it is totally, like you said, it's everything. And you want to have that as you start creating, you want that high frequency, good enough quality. That was one of the quotes that I used in that essay that Anthony Pompliano had shared, and something that I had watched on a podcast. You want high frequency, good enough quality. And that helps you build your confidence into realizing that you can create and you can do it at scale, and it could be something that people find valuable.
So one thing that we touched on is just the education, in the sense of, we both grew up where we didn't think we were creative. Do you think that's something that we could change through education? Do you think that's something and how would we go about doing that?
Man, absolutely I do. I'm so glad you asked that, because yes, absolutely I do. And so I don't have a whole host of solutions to this or anything that I've even tried, but I have thought about it quite a bit. And so you think about school, and I just think about how I was in school. I was, immature. Everyone's immature in their own way, some more than others. But, when you're in high school, there's just so much that you don't know, or high school, middle school, whatever. And school is a very separated environment. It turns into social cliques in many instances. Like, that just tends to happen, whether kids mean for that to happen or not. And so I think that is part of it. And I don't know that there's a way to change that part of it. But, thinking to myself, if I identify myself as an athlete, that means that I'm putting that kind of at the top of my hierarchy of skills. And now by very nature of that, identifying myself lower in terms of creativity, because I look at the other, the kids who are interested in theater or music, or like we said, like those are the creative disciplines. So those are the creative kids. And so by identifying myself one way, I've unidentified myself in another way. And so I think that's a big part of it. And a reason why so many people would feel the same way that we do is because that's a reality of school in many instances. So one of my big things to think about changing this is, I think that there's quite a low level of awareness in general, particularly in public schools, but probably all schools, for kids who have a greater awareness of the possibilities of what they can do with their life and for a living outside of the environment that they live in. So I'm from a very rural area in Southern Illinois, about an hour away from St. Louis. And my parents both worked in education. There's a small university in the town that I grew up with. And that was kind of my worldview. And I believed that I was going to be a teacher. And so when I went to college, that was what I started studying, was education. I thought I was going to be a teacher. And I realized along the way that I didn't want to do that. But I would say that's typical, is kids have the imagination for their life based upon the environment that they're in. And schools generally don't do a great job of expanding that, in my opinion. I think there's a lot of career learnings that are missed in terms of expanding, teaching kids about, hey, here's what goes on in tech. You could be a developer. You could do this. You could be an entrepreneur. Now we have an economy that's moving in the direction of individual creators. So is school going to change to reflect that? Probably not a lot. So that's kind of one of the things that I think school could address, is opening up creativity as a term, as it applies to different career opportunities. Because now you realize, like, hey, creativity is in all of these things in a way. And obviously, like, working very hard to change the definition of that word creativity would be a huge thing. But really opening the imagination to things that are outside of the environment that you're in is one of the biggest things that I think could be done.
It's really interesting because it makes me think about, how fortunate kids are growing up today. A lot of people talk about the downsides to kids having phones at a young age and kids having access to the internet at a young age. What it really does, though, is it opens your possibilities for what is possible. I don't know how old you are, but I grew up with a MacBook in 6th, 7th grade, and I was on Facebook, and I was on the internet, I was on Twitter in 6th, 7th grade, and I was like, oh my God, this is awesome. Like, there are people, all over the world writing and doing things, and it opened up the potential for what I thought was possible. So I think the internet gives an expanded worldview that we otherwise kids wouldn't have access to.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you say this. I'm not trying to plug all these essays, but they're just things that I've thought about. Plug away, brother. I wrote an essay on, funny enough, about TikTok. And I think my theory is that TikTok is actually, in reality, one of the most valuable tools for opening creativity in the minds of kids than anything. I mean, I'm on TikTok. I haven't ever created a video on TikTok, but I'm on it because I think there are some astoundingly creative videos on TikTok. Sure, there's a lot of kids just dancing, but there are some hilarious videos that people have been very creative and thought a lot about, putting a lot of creative energy into. And kids are exposed to that side of TikTok, in addition to what many adults would consider the downsides of it, but they're exposed to the creative side. It's an environment where kids are encouraged to have creativity if they want to grow up. It's an environment that gives kids the base understanding that they could be a creator and that could be their career. Like they understand that they could build a personal brand on a platform, and then they have to think about how that could become something that they monetize and make into something more than just having some fun. But I think it's a hugely interesting tool for creativity, and it has a bad rap for several reasons, and I guess I understand those. But I just think that it's picking up a lot of the slack that school doesn't tap into, and creating a kid accepted way of expressing creativity and producing something cool.
So you would be optimistic for a child being raised in today's environment? It sounds like that. I'm curious what you have to say about this, because it's something that I've thought about. Is like, a lot of people have fears about today's society and about the world that we're living in, and they look at it negatively. But it sounds like from your perspective that you're more leaning in the other direction. Like, no, this is a good thing. Like, kids are having more chance to see the world.
Yeah, so you're right. It does sound like that from what I just said. I would say that, man, like most things in life, I definitely fall somewhere in the middle there. Like I can totally see both sides of that coin. And like everything else, there's probably a very particular level of balance that's required with that. Any of these tools could be used very negatively and impact kids in quite a negative way. And there are totally some downsides with TikTok, so I would never call it all upside. But I just think that there's such an interesting component to, with in the right setting, in the right scenario, maybe with the right supervision, depending on the age of the student. There's so much interesting upside with this that, and as the world keeps developing into this more technological world, as the economy keeps trending the way that it's trending right now into a less traditional job, more creator-friendly economy, I think that there's a lot of baseline learning that could be had in engaging in some of those things. So to answer your question very directly, I don't think that I would probably be all the way on one side. I would definitely encourage using any forms of like social media as a learning tool in the right ways. But I definitely understand the side where it's addictive, obviously, and can create a lot of interesting self-beliefs, some downsides, can create depression and some tough stuff that you really want to try to avoid at all costs. So yeah, I'm probably in the middle. I'm not all the way on one side or the other of that argument.
I love it.
It's a boring answer.
No, it's actually my favorite. And this is what I love about writers, and this is what I love about your answer. It contains so much nuance, and it really got you have to consider both sides to anything, and there's not good or bad, but if you're able to look at both, you're able to see that, reality is often not negative or positive. It's just somewhere in the middle, and it's up to you to figure out how to best implement those tools. So I really appreciate your answer.
Yeah.
All right, Ryan, tell us, before we wrap this baby up, I want you to tell us some final parting pieces of wisdom. I know you've got a lot of wisdom in that head of yours. So give us just a little nugget or two that you have for the Danny Miranda podcast listeners.
Oh man. Okay. So yeah, I would say the biggest one touches on something that we already talked about a little bit, but the biggest piece of wisdom that I could give comes from probably my own personal experience with, I don't necessarily, I would never call anything like in my life like something that I regret, but there are plenty of things that I wish I would have started sooner in life. And those maybe would be the bits of wisdom that I'm going to touch on. So the first one would be figure it out, whatever it is, what you like to work on that is your creative medium. And if you're someone who's, especially for someone who's in like high school, college, or recently thereafter, like those are the times to figure that out, because you have so much time on your side, and everything in terms of like writing or even having a presence online at all it's a compounding effect. And so you want more and more time for those compounding effects to take place. And someone that I really barely even know engaged with a tweet of mine yesterday, and I thought this was so profound. She said she had someone in her college class, and that person had said, college is a great time to be really bad at something. And I think that's very poignant. Like if you start doing something, it's totally fine to be bad at that because you have time on your side. You're starting now, and you're going to start developing at a much quicker pace. So that's one thing. Another thing I would say is to literally just take networking quite seriously, but not in the way that you might think, or you might have your dad or your mom or a grandparent even say like, you need to be networking, Ryan. It's not that serious, but it's fun when it's done right. So I have met more people online this year. And I think from talking to you, Danny, you would probably say something similar. Like I've met more people online this year than any year before. And I always thought it might be weird to meet people online, like through Twitter or through other forms of engagement online. And it's been exactly the opposite of that. Everyone that I have met and networked with online has been fantastic. And I've started WritersBloc with 2 of them. And it's just everything's been positive, and just reaching out to somebody to tell them you like their work or to ask them a question or two. Those are other things that have unlimited upside to them. So I would say to just try and meet people who you find someone who's interested in the same things that you are, creating the same things that you're creating, and reach out to them and just try and engage with them consistently because there's so much upside there. And again, those are things that'll pay off further down the road. None of those things have immediate gratification to them most of the time, but they're incredibly important things. So I would say those are probably my 2 biggest bits of wisdom, and they just come, like I said, from I wish I would have done these things earlier in my life. And so if you're someone I'm 29, if you're someone who's younger than me, like do them now because by the time you're 29, you'll be far and ahead of anywhere that I am. I feel like I'm just starting in a lot of these things, and I wish I would have done them earlier.
Dude, that is such great advice, and hopefully you guys listening will take Ryan up on that. Ryan, tell everyone where they could find your work.
Yeah, so you can always find me on Twitter. That's a popular platform for communicating, at Ryan S. Mulholland. My last name is Mulholland, like the street. And then also on my website, ryansmulholland.com. That's where I write. And if you're interested in checking out WritersBloc, our writing community, that's writersblochq.com. And we're on Twitter as well, WritersBlocHQ. So that's where you can find me. I'm more than happy to connect and chat with everyone who's a listener. And I love Danny and all the work he's doing and all the positivity he's putting out in the world.
Thank you very much, brother, for joining us today. And it was an absolute pleasure, and I'm so grateful for your presence and your wisdom.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Danny. I appreciate it.
That was my episode with Ryan Mulholland. If you enjoyed this episode, let me know on Twitter at HeyDannyMiranda. I absolutely love your feedback, and it is my oxygen. That's all we have for this episode. Don't forget to subscribe if you're not subscribed, and also leave us a review on iTunes. That would be super helpful and truly appreciated. Thank you so much for listening until the final seconds. Appreciate you. With love, to the next one.